received the email from you last month that said I'm a little concerned that our meetings continue to go long. And I want to be respectful of your time and the folks who come to these meetings to try and stay on time. So we've moved some of the general updates to the end so that those folks that are waiting to present something could be moved up towards the beginning. There are a couple things we'll keep at the beginning and just kind of give me feedback on how this works for y'all. If you have any other suggestions, that'd be great. Any other changes or amendments to the agenda? There was a last minute addition actually that we wanted to point out that has been added since you were emailed the document, and that is an update from the thruway bus rail service. So we have Ray Rapp here, and he'll be giving us an update shortly after the ART transit updates. That is different than the original document you saw. It's just before new business, okay? So first up are Asheville Downtown Association updates. I have a quick list of events coming up. One second. Big downtown cleanup day is April 18th. We can meet at Pritchard Park, and we'll kind of move through downtown picking up trash and cigarette butts and collecting things and trying to generally clean up the urban environment. Shortly after that is the Easter on the Greens, and that is Saturday, April 20th from 2 to 5 p.m. at McGuire Green Place, and fun event for the families, bring the kids. We have a big speaker series in May 8th. That is a big one. It's Deborah Campbell, our new city manager, will be joining us. I highly encourage you to come and visit with Deborah and hear more from her about how it's going with the city and what her plans are. Lastly, just a general plug. So the Asheville Downtown Association is a nonprofit. We're an organization of other businesses in downtown. If you are involved in a business that is a member of the ADA, then I'd like to take this opportunity to invite your business to join. There's a lot of information online. You can also talk with me afterwards about the perks and benefits and why it's always a good thing to be part of the ADA. And those are all the ADA updates I have for today. We're going to quickly jump into design review committee updates.
We had a meeting last month. All of the committee members were in attendance. We had one project that was there for review, and I believe this was the second review that Peter Alvarez and his team came to present. It's a very large mixed-use project. It's located between Broadway Street and North Market Street. This was, I think, the second of probably 3 reviews that Peter's bringing to the subcommittee. I think I noticed this morning on the news it was had their public meeting, I think sometime this week, last night. But the project, and Sasha, thank you for sending out those very detailed notes in our meeting. So I'm not going to go into a lot of detail, but I am going to go over the highlights so that the commission is kind of aware of the points that were discussed at length during the commission meeting, committee meeting. But it's a 9-story hotel project with 3 stories, additional parking, and 7 stories of residential. The interesting and beneficial thing that's come out of the second meeting where there were comments were made in the first meeting by the committee members that were incorporated into the design. So we appreciate the team, design team, working with us on that. There's one of those being a pedestrian connection between Broadway Street and North Market. We appreciate it. There's I guess Asheville's second real green roof on this project is being proposed, so that's exciting. Also some public access on rooftop amenity. In addition to pedestrian connections that were discussed extensively, building setbacks were discussed a lot, as well as building materials. And you can see in the notes all the details about that, but specifically the use of some modified EPIS materials to try to bypass some of the issues that have been occurring downtown, and the extensive use of masonry. And the last point I wanted to mention was that we just discussed a lot of opportunities that exist with this kind of being a gateway for the arts district, if you'll say, downtown, and the developer has already identified that, and they're incorporating elements into their plan for that. So I guess we're probably going to be seeing them next month. That was it.
That's a great update. I attended the meeting, and I'll add that it did have ground floor activation, so ground floor retail space or commercial space, which is something we talked about within the residential component, so about 20% of the residential will be affordable in perpetuity, is my understanding. But I look forward to hearing about that project. Excellent. Thank you. Any other design review committee updates? Okay. Great. So we're moving quickly. We're going to move on to the Thomas Wolfe Auditorium and the Cellular Center updates. There's Chris. Great.
Hi, I'm Chris Corwell, General Manager at the U.S. Cellular Center, for those of you that I haven't met before. So two main updates. The really big one for us, the Thomas Wolfe Auditorium architectural contract just got approved on Tuesday by City Council. Hopefully that will be actually signed today. One of the architecture team members actually is here. Chris Day is on the team with ESA Architects, which is a group out of Nashville. I've got a lot of experience in performing arts centers, Tennessee Performing Arts Center in Nashville, Gilliard Center in Charleston, downtown Charleston, and then the Schermerhorn in Nashville as well. So those are like the three highlight projects. They've got a lot of other performing arts spaces that they've worked in, but really good team. And they're designing a visioning scope and an initial basic design. For the dollars that we have available, they can't design all the nuts, bolts, and everything of the project, but really they're out there to give us really solid final numbers on what we dictated to them to be a $40 million project to completely renovate the main house of the theater, the stage area, give us the ability to change the scope of the events that come in, the quantity of events, and really the quality in a sense. Major backstage changes, green room changes, loading changes, traffic patterns for back of house, not public traffic pattern changes. And basically triple in the restrooms, because if anybody's ever been to an event over the building, you know we're very lacking on restrooms. So those are kind of the highlights of the Thomas Wolfe project. The timeline, we're looking at 16 to 18 weeks from today for the final product. They're going to be coming to town. We're asking them to do some charrettes with stakeholders, so we're going to ask some members of City Council to come join, downtown stakeholders, CUB stakeholders, all the parties that are involved with what our venue does and what we do for the community. And honestly, I'm really excited about it because I feel like it's got a lot of potential. Any questions? Thomas Wolfe project?
How long will the space be in the dark during the proposed construction?
Great question. So it's really going to depend on how we do it. We've asked them to look at either phasing it or if it makes more sense to just go out and come back. From my experience with other people I know in the industry, if we just go out, do the full project and come back, it's going to be 18 months to 24. If we do it in phases, it can probably be done in 3 or 4 sets of 6 months. For me, it makes more sense to just go down, get it all done, and come back, just because budgetarily, and what do we do with our staff that isn't working during those periods, things like that. And really, from a fundraising perspective, phasing works better because the community sees the first couple phases that are coming, and then it's easier to raise the additional money as you go. So challenges pros each direction.
Is the design substantial? Are we going to review the design, or is it mostly internal?
This design, the first phase design, I wouldn't say it's necessarily for review for approval, but it's basic design of scope, so it's not going to get into exterior changes, really. It's mostly interior changes, so I don't believe it goes to the scope of this group, but I don't know.
We only review exterior changes.
Yeah, I wasn't sure. So $40 million, is this funded, or you just mentioned fundraising? How does this work?
We have a plan in our heads.
That's good.
First money in theoretically is naming rights for the facility. We're hoping that the county potentially chips in, the city potentially chips in. We have a feasibility study contracted to start this month actually for a group to go out and work with potential funders in the community to see what our private scope could be. We've indicated to the symphony that we'd like them to have some type of stake in the game. We haven't given them a set number, they haven't given us a set number. And there's all the money hopefully comes together into a pot that we can go to the Tourism Development Authority and look for a match on. And that's how we get to the big number, hopefully.
Sounds like, anybody have any questions about the civic center or the,
I have a question about the naming rights. What naming rights are going to be up for grabs?
Right now, just the naming rights of the whole complex, so it's now currently the US Cellular Center. We may potentially go to council and look for the opportunity to allow for naming rights of the Thomas Wolfe Auditorium, because that's gonna be a major potential funding source for us. Not required though, there's plenty of theaters out there. I mean, you just heard one of them was Tennessee Performing Arts Center. They didn't feel the need to go out and get funders for the name. DPACs like that. Peace Center is a funder by the name. The Peace family helped fund that endowment. So there's a lot of different opportunities out there. What I would say for the Thomas Wolfe Auditorium, that that's the third name for that venue. So a lot of people don't know that. So it's not actually the original name.
Interesting.
It is a little funny to have a performing arts stage named after a waiter.
Good point.
Or a center named after another center in another county. Any other questions, comments for Chris while we have him? I know there's been some, I've received a lot of communication from community members about the naming rights. I don't know if that's something we really want to go into, but it sounds like that is already in process and you have a.
It is. So I can go into the general process of that. So July 2018, we went to the City Council Finance Committee to get approval on what our process was, which was essentially notifying US Cellular that we were going to go out for bid again. Bid's a bad word. We were going to go out looking for proposals again, because it's not a bid. We put out some press releases about it. We had a lot of press about the fact that we were looking to talk to new companies about the naming rights. All told, we talked to about 14 companies. It got second, third, fourth meetings with about 7 companies. So we got pretty far along with a lot of different groups. Ultimately, we only had 2 proposals. I can put it up here, I think, if this is.
Yeah.
It's really small, but I can hand out some too, just so you can see it. We handed this out to our Civic Center Commission, if we want to pass that around.
Kimberly Hunter, not here today, but
Yeah. So Kimberly Hunter's on our commission. We handed this out to them on April 2nd, I believe it was, which is when we announced what our bids were. So we have 2 bids, one from US Cellular, which is essentially a continuation of our current deal. So year 1, which would be next year, we'd earn around $170,000 with a 2% escalator moving forward on that. And that deal's a 3 plus 2, so the first 3 years guaranteed, 2 years mutually agreeable. We also negotiated an offer from Harris Cherokee Resort, which is a 5 plus 5, so a 5-year guarantee with a 5-year mutually agreeable extension. They also offered up $750,000 total for fan improvements, $500,000 targeted towards video board, $250,000 towards things like free public Wi-Fi, other AV needs, and other associated needs of the venue to be determined. They'll also cover up to $250,000 for all signage, change-outs, uniforms, et cetera, et cetera. That deal's total value is just under 6 times greater than the US Cellular value. So it's significant, as you can imagine. And the hope and the goal from the Harris team and from staff, if we were to go with the Harris offer, was to use that extra money towards the Thomas Wolfe funding. So our US Cellular money, just so you know, all goes towards payment of the renovations, the Southern Conference renovations that were done in 2011 through 14. So all of that US Cellular money every year just pays off our debt service. So that first roughly $150,000, $170,000 from a new deal, if a new deal were to come, would go towards that debt service, and then the roughly $330,000 additional funds would go towards Thomas Wolfe funding initially.
what's the remaining debt service?
It sunsets in 2032.
So, and this is done, this is like the only 2 bids we're gonna look at, we're not spreading the net or casting a new net or anything.
The way
These
that
are different, these are big, different.
they are big difference. So I had verbal deals in between these that I just couldn't get converted into written offers. So there is a potential that written offers could come in between now and time of the Finance Committee at the end of the month. I would say it's probably very unlikely. But we built the structure so that we can accept bids all the way up until we have to put the packets in for Finance Committee. So somebody can turn it in as late as, I guess, Thursday next week, since Friday's a city holiday. So if you know any companies that have a lot of money, put in, send them away.
Did I hear that right? I guess I didn't quite get the expanse of the sponsorship, so the uniforms, everything becomes.
Yeah, just for like a quick list. So, like, what does the winning sponsor get, if you will? Everywhere that the US Cellular name is currently is exterior signage like our monument sign, the pole banner, street wayfinding signing, uniforms, receipts, ticket stocks, credits and mentions on local, regional, national TV whenever we're on broadcast, credits and mention on web stream broadcasts, Netflix filmings that we do, credits, TV, radio, and any other streaming services. Like we recorded a few events for Audible and some podcasts, WBZ, and things like that. All event advertising, you've probably seen some more events advertised. It says at the Cellular Center, it would be similar. The Asheville app, which is really minute as far as where we are, it's on there. Our venue website name would change, which is currently uscellularcenterasheville.com. And new this time around with the naming rights process, we got approval from the Finance Committee to also rename the Civic Center parking deck to coincide with our venue. Because it's actually been a big challenge over the last few years that we have the US Cellular Center and then the Civic Center deck beside it. It hurts our brand on the Cellular Center side, and it's also just confusing to the general public. The one big difference between these two offers, US Cellular didn't want to add on any dollars towards the civic parking deck, so that would still stay the civic parking deck. The Harris Resort offer would rename parking garage. Does that make sense?
So what happens to the ExploreAsheville.com arena?
Nothing. So how the complex works, it's the ExploreAsheville.com arena, banquet hall, and Thomas Wolfe Auditorium at US Cellular Center.
And what would be the official name then? Would it be Harris Cherokee Center?
We are actually still negotiating a name. We've gone through probably about 45 names at this point, trying to find one that we feel comfortable with and they also feel comfortable with. We do have directive from the ECBI that we're trying to find a culturally significant name or a name that's significant to the community as a whole. So it's not necessarily like the big fear that came out even before we announced all these was that it would just be the Harris Cherokee Casino Center. The word casino is not going to be anywhere in the name, anywhere inside the venue. It's all going to be based on resort.
Yeah, I find it's interesting, the outrage about the word casino, because they're a huge sponsor of our flagship university here, the University of North Asheville. It says casino resort. So those are our youth, but somehow we're up in arms about it when it comes to a civic center. I find it a bit annoying.
Yeah, it's interesting too. They're a sponsor of Asheville Tourist, Western Carolina University, UNCA, UNC Chapel Hill School of Business, Western Carolina Performing Arts Center. I've got a whole list of the goods that they do, which is significant, inclusive of about $100,000 annually to organizations within Buncombe County, such as Humana Food Bank, Care Partners, Children's Welfare League, Aledo Home. There's a pretty long list, and they do a lot of good, even more than I knew, to be honest with you. I was really surprised whenever we started talking about this. I almost didn't even take the first meeting, but you got to ask, and it was incredible what they do.
They're also a major economic funder in Cherokee.
They are. I mean, just imagine what that area would be like without that resort. It would be a completely different place.
Chris, what did the Civic Center Commission recommend? Because they weighed in on a choice here, or I'm not sure.
They did. So we asked them to look at public meetings to get some more input, and they moved to not hold public meetings and ended up voting 3-2 with one recusal because he has Harris as a client to vote for US Cellular to continue with that.
They voted 3-2 for US Cellular.
3-2. We do have 9 members. Kimberly, for example, was there at the beginning, but she had to leave early, and we had a couple people that weren't able to get back from work trips in time for the meetings. So we were short on our full commission.
So it could have been different.
It could have been, yes.
And then it sounded like the CBB is going to make this, or there's going to be an ask to the CBB for matching. Are they weighing in on this process at all, since they're considered major funders?
Yeah, we talked to them before we announced what they were, just to let them know and get some input. We also talked to them about potentially taking the naming rights of the full complex. Haven't really gotten anywhere with that, and so just have to wait to see if they can move forward with it.
Okay. Thank you, that's a lot of information. I feel like it's more than I've seen in the media too. It's helpful to have real information.
Yeah, they don't have enough time on the news to actually get all the information out there.
So true. Maybe that's something that goes on our site. Or
There,
maybe the
just
media
remember the
today,
media here.
we have some media.
Publish
sure we'd have to go back to either finance committee or full council to ask for that, because when we asked, we only asked in conjunction with. I can tell you from the conversations I've had with a lot of companies, there are a lot of assets that the city owns that companies are interested in that I could probably sell.
Interesting. Thank you so much for being here this morning. Okay. Next up, we have our transit updates, and Marcella. Good morning. You have this document in your packet as well, folks.
Thanks, Tina. Hi, I'm Marcella Moreno. I don't think I've met any of you. So I'm the new transit projects coordinator, and I started back in November. So a couple of updates. For the past couple of months, Jessica, the assistant director of transportation, and I have been taking year one of the transit master plan recommendations and kind of breaking them down, which is what is in front of you and also on the screen here. And basically, with the money that's been discussed given to transit, which around 1.2 million, from the conversations I've seen, we're going to try and implement the purple and green packages from the transit master plan, which includes increasing the frequency of the 170 that goes out to Black Mountain, implementing the Crosstown 2 and Crosstown 4. So combining the W3 and E2, W4 and E1, and slightly extending those routes, and maintaining the E1 so that the frequency is still maintained. And I believe it's every 20 minutes, but I could be wrong. So there will be an extension of service hours, so that's going to cost us some money, as well as the second package, the green, which is primarily the W routes, which is realigning them and creating a separate route that serves PVA specifically, so we can maintain on-time performance for the W1 and W2. And basically, we've been working with Carolyn Flower, she's a consultant, to figure out where can we get the biggest bang for our buck, since we have that 1.2 million, and implementing all of the changes in year one of the transit master plan, as far as service hours and working with our contractor would be 3.7 million, and that I believe is exclusive of fuel costs. So it's a little bit more than that. So we're going to aim for the purple, green, and tan package if possible. And basically the next steps for the transit master plan, we've started writing an RFQ for the map and schedule changes, and we hope that that's going to go out at the end of April, which is exciting. And we're going to be negotiating with RATP Dev, our contractor, to bring the price to something that we can maintain going forward. So that's kind of where we're at with the transit master plan. Do you all have any questions about that before I move on to the next thing?
My question's gonna be around the plan's entire budget and the scope of where we're at and how much the shortfall is. So if you're gonna get into that, I'm gonna have this question.
Oh, okay. I believe it's going to cost around $2 million for the first year as far as the purple and the green.
You have the money, or is this, I'm trying to gauge if we're going into a budget ask or you have the money to implement on the plan.
So the budget ask was the 1.2 million, which is enough to implement it starting January 1, 2020. So that would be half of the year. And then going forward, there would be a budget ask to maintain that level of service. Because we don't want to implement changes and then be like, we don't have the money to go forward.
And that's just the phase one, but how many phases of the transit master plan are there?
So this is all of year one's recommendations. So we would have to reassess because there's several phases for the transit master plan as far as like county extensions and other route realignments based on ridership. So that would have to be assessed later.
Do we know the whole number if we wanted, if we could do everything, what would it cost?
Yeah, if we could do everything, that was the 3.7 million number. So that's everything including the service hour extensions, so that Sundays would go until 8 o'clock as opposed to 6, and some late night routes.
I ask because we're, the parking and transportation committee often looks at ways we can increase parking in the hopes of getting more transit, so I'm just asking for random.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you, helps to understand the gap. Okay,
side of the buses, in the little racks that go above where you're sitting. As far as advertising on the bus routes, I do not know.
It's a sign code.
It's a sign code. So
People used to do that, we stopped.
I can see the community not voting it, just, general comment as we talked about here, this is other.
Yeah, I only know from the operational standpoint that it's not it's a hassle apparently.
Yeah, I can imagine, and not pretty. How much of this is electric buses? Are electric buses out and running, right?
So that was my next
Okay.
update. Yes. So the electric buses, we're working with Proterra over the next couple of months for driver training to ensure that we're getting the maximum we can out of our range, because the way, just like any hybrid vehicle, the way that you drive it impacts the mileage. So we're having Proterra come in and help us with driver training, as well as running the routes to make sure that we're optimizing and driving the way that we need to get all of the juice out of them. So that is still in flux, and that will be happening over the next couple months. So you might see the electric buses. I believe they're going to definitely be here next week. So you might see an electric bus shadowing one of our other buses.
So they're not currently running?
No, they're not currently running in service, but they might be out for training or
Okay.
for testing.
A couple of us drive electric vehicles and we're very familiar with how you drive it and the matters.
Yes. Yeah, I'm curious, so I know that if I'm hitting the gas. And the other thing is our terrain is pretty unique, so it's really great that we're having them come in and showing us, how you drive in this hilly terrain, because you do need to floor it sometimes to get up.
Especially if you're in a hurry too, like that hurry, and then buses are coming, they try to catch up. Okay.
Yeah, and that's another thing we hope that the transit master plan will help with is on-time performance, so you don't need to be rushing the entire time. That would be the ideal goal. And then the next big thing I have, if you guys don't have any questions about the electric buses. Okay, great. The last update I have is on the art station renovation. So Public Works, or not Public Works, Capital Projects is mobilizing at the art station starting next Monday. And there will be some disruptions as far as the stormwater work that they're doing downtown the station. And that'll start likely the week after, so we're looking at April 22nd, but the contractor is going to give us 3 days notice. So one of the lanes will be closed. I believe the northbound will be shut down first, and then we'll be loading on Ashland. And there will be signage, and we plan on sending out an IRIDE alert to all of our riders, as well as a text alert prior to that disruption beginning. And after the stormwater work on the station is completed, we'll be working on the building renovation and the solar panels on the roof and that whole package of changes. And that will likely begin in June and may continue until winter 2020. But we're hoping that it will be completed before the winter.
That's great.
And while those inside renovations occur, we'll have these mobile offices essentially for ticketing and bathrooms for both staff and our riders, and that'll include an ADA accessible bathroom.
Great.
I have a quick question about that. Is the loading on Ashland going to be covered or uncovered?
It is uncovered.
Okay. Great on that.
So when I rode by the bus, I used to try to get tests, and that never seemed to work. And then, so I stopped doing it. Then recently I tried it again, and it worked really well. But then it kept texting me random buses that I wasn't interested in or never took. So I don't know, is there something going on with that, or?
Interesting. I have a similar experience. You get all the updates or not?
Well, I don't get all. I mean, that would be crazy, but but randomly, on Thursday at 8 o'clock at night, I get S-Bus updated. So I don't know. Anyway.
Is it one of the updates where it's the S1 isn't running, or is it an update on its times and
Yeah,
stuff?
it's an update on the time.
Okay.
I can go back and check.
Cool, that's bizarre. Although if you have a screenshot or anything that you can share with me, that would be awesome. Because the alerts that do go out to everyone, it's if a buses down. That goes to all subscribers, no matter what you're specifically subscribed to.
Maybe that's what it was. Okay, good to know. Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Very exciting. Thank you for being here to share that.
Yeah, of course.
Okay. One more, so our Lake District on the agenda. Gentlemen, I've seen make this presentation or talk for decades, I'm happy to have him here. Come on up. It's exciting.
I hope I bring you some exciting news. I'm Greg Rapp. I know some of you, and I hope to get to know those I don't know at this point. And we're bringing, I'm chair right now of the Western North Carolina Rail Committee, which was incorporated in 1917. One of the members of that committee, where did you go? You're over here, okay. One of the members of that committee is Stacy Burke from your planning staff, and she has been a stalwart member of the committee that has started out as an Asheville Chamber of Commerce committee back in 1999-2000 to restore passenger rail service to Asheville. And that committee waxed and waned in its efforts, and I won't take you through that whole history, but in 1917, there were remnants of that committee. Bless Stacy for being one of those folks that continued to come to these quarterly meetings when some folks approached me to, because of my background as chairing in the North Carolina House, both the House Select Committee on Improving and Expanding Rail Service in North Carolina, and then I chaired the Joint House Senate Committee to do the same thing. And they said, would you, I went to a couple of meetings, and they wanted to elect me chair, they did, and we had a conference at your Civic Center in September of 2017, Railroads and Economic Development, and we brought the railroads in, we brought economic development folks, the city of Asheville was among those that was represented there, and so we reconstituted this committee, the Western North Carolina Rail Committee, with three foci. The mission statement now is, number one, to improve and expand freight rail service in the region, because that is leaving us. And our newest addition to the region is Blue Ridge Southern, which is now serving Asheville, Canton, and Hendersonville. But freight rail is the backbone of any passenger rail system, so that's number one on our list of concerns. Secondly, is to improve and expand tourist and excursion trains to Western North Carolina. You've got one right close by that is a startup now in terms of your Craggy Mountain line, which next Saturday, starts their service for the season. One of the members of our committee who was just elected to our board is David Huskins, who is the lobbyist for the Great Smoky Mountain Railway, another tourist line in the region. So that's our second foci, to improve, expand, and encourage things such as Blue Ridge Rail Riders, which is talking about pedal cars running between Hendersonville and Brevard, where you pedal these cars on that track, which is essentially in non-use. We're working with Don Sweeney, who is the fellow who wants to invest in that. And then the third, which has always been the first goal of the old committee, is to reestablish a passenger rail connection between Asheville and Salisbury on the main line. That is finally coming to play. Now, we worked over the years with the rail division to upgrade, and I was in the legislature at the time, we upgraded stations all along this line between Asheville and Salisbury. Asheville's piece, you bought land down in Biltmore Village with the idea that you were going to put it together a multimodal facility there that would service train, bus, as well as cabs and other services coming in there. You now have a parking lot down there but that's what you did with the money. It was 80% federal, 10% state, 10% local money. in places such as Old Fort. They have a real estate office in there now, because if you take the money, it has to be used for multiple purposes, not just if you have a train coming. So they have today they have a real estate office in Marion. Upgraded that facility. The whole area has been upgraded, but that's the Marion Business Association is what's in there now. In Conover, they've done a major development down there. Statesville has a police station now, which has space for passengers if the train comes through. And lastly, which was really the first station to be renovated, was Salisbury. And that is just if you haven't seen their structure, just make a trip someday and visit it. It's magnificent. But all that money was distributed with the idea there would be eventually trains, passenger train service. But they recognize they only need the station probably for 2 hours a day. What are you going to do with the other 22 hours a day? So that has been going on and has gone on all these years, but still no train. And so we took a step back from this, working with the rail division, and we said what really might make sense is, I'm going to see if this map will show up here. What really would make sense is to do what they did in the eastern part of the state. And let me tell you, when I chaired these two special committees on improving and expanding rail service in North Carolina, we had the agreement with the rail division, which they continue to honor, that they would work on doing that, establishing Amtrak Thruway bus service between Wilmington and Wilson and Morehead City and Wilson, which is on the main north-south line served by Amtrak. And the agreement was, we'll get that started. This has been going on for about 10 years now. We'll get that started in the east, and then we'll look west to work with you folks in western North Carolina. So you can go to the Amtrak station now. You can get a brochure, which the headline is "Thruway is the New Way to the Coast of North Carolina." What we want is Thruway is the new way to the mountains of North Carolina. And folks, we have gotten enough legislators on board that this, I think, is very feasible. And I got a call from Speaker Moore's office last night that in the budget that will be presented to the House, the Transportation Committee has approved what we need for 2 years of Amtrak Thruway bus service, $890,000. That's $400,000 a year to basically, it has to be put in escrow for Amtrak to draw down for Thruway bus service between Asheville and Salisbury. The $90,000 is to pay Jay Arthur, who is Jay MacArthur, rather, who's a former Amtrak employee who negotiated the agreements for Amtrak with Wilmington and Morehead City when that service was implemented. And he will become the consultant for this project in western North Carolina. If this money is finally approved, and remember, this is a long legislative process, so I don't want to get too carried away, but we've gotten over a major hurdle by having not only the Speaker of the House support this, but the Chair, John Torben, of the Transportation Appropriations Committee in the House. And this is the year where the House initiates the budget. So we've really taken strides forward in this regard. What we want is that service similar, to what we have in the east, we want here in the west. And now, just one other thing. In the long-range plan of NCDOT's rail division, the be-all and end-all isn't to have Amtrak Thruway bus service between Asheville and Salisbury. It is to have a dedicated train run by NCDOT between Asheville and Salisbury. What we need to do is demonstrate that there is enough interest in ridership to warrant an actual train between between the two communities along the S lines. So that's a real short status report of where we are, but it is going to impact, and Stacy may want to talk about this, it is going to impact Asheville in many ways, beginning with where's the station for a stop going to be in Asheville. And that is we were in a meeting earlier this week where there were lots of ideas being bounced around where would be the appropriate location. That's going to be on you. Jake MacArthur comes to town, he'll expect to have one or two locations to visit that would be prospects for the service. So, Stacy, do you want to add anything to this? I think
We really covered it all. I mean, that is essentially where we are. We're kind of waiting until we hear that the legislature has approved. I'm just taking a positive outlook. And then we'll move into identifying a location. So be thinking about it. We would be interested in all your opinions. I think we know that like parking is going to be an important criteria. I think a downtown location would be best. But there have been other ideas thrown around. So we'll hopefully be moving towards identifying a station in the coming months.
Where, like, we're talking about the station, like a bus station, or just
Basically, just
I mean, when we're talking bus and train connections, so
we're talking about a bus station at this point, a spot, and really just a spot for the bus to pick folks up, because the ticketing will all be online. At this point, I think we said that we definitely need to have parking. Other things like cover, obviously like shelter and bathrooms would be ideal, but I don't think it's absolutely necessary.
That was my first thought. What about the Richard Park bathrooms and that, where we just put the cross town south?
I mean, that's,
Yeah.
yeah, so
I'm curious, so.
why not the art station?
that's my kind of, that's what I'm,
Yeah.
and that's where I'm gonna
Local.
really turn this over to you folks to make that determination when we bring Jake.
That's great.
You know, I'm working the state end of this now, but it is really getting granular to the point of we've got to sit down with each community. Marion's got their designated spot, so does Morganton. One of the other caveats on this is it has to be near the interstate to begin with. But, you know, basically we're talking about paralleling what Norfolk Southern calls the S line, which runs from Knoxville to Asheville to Salisbury. But it's basically to parallel that S line so that, you know, if we build up that ridership, it basically follows that route.
I'm curious to build the ridership of the bus to basically portray that we would use the train. How much do we need to spend $400,000 of bus ridership per year to prove that we weren't that much traffic?
That's an excellent question, because that's what, you know, we've been in the weeds on this for some time now. We have a proposal from Amtrak to put us, meaning at Western North Carolina, as an addendum to the existing contract between NCDOT and Amtrak for services. Their projection for the bus services, there will only be 2,100 riders a year, and I just gasped when I heard that number. That's really low. Then I found out there's a good news in that.